I'm going to call to order the meeting, the September 7th, 2010 regular meeting of the Hudson Board of Education. For those who are able, please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Board members, you have the agenda in front of you. Is there a motion to and a second to approve and accept the motion or the agenda?
Madam President, I move to approve the agenda.
Okay, motion by Lynn.
Second.
Second by Mr. Holland. All those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda is the superintendent's report, and first on that list is the high school dean of students.
And I'm very pleased this evening to introduce you to our new Dean of Students at the high school, Kevin Moore. Kevin, you want to stand up and come on down, and I'll just talk about you a little bit while you do that. Kevin comes to us from Adams Friendship, where he has 10 years of experience as a grade 9 through 12 chemistry teacher. And he had the responsibility in the absence of the principal and the assistant principal as being in charge of the building. He was a teacher leader at Adams Friendship, and we certainly will take advantage of his leadership and his experience with doing that. I'm going to point out one of the things he did, and that was chairing a committee that developed and implemented freshman transition and an upperclassmen mentoring program. Now that really aligns with our high school of the future work and the emphasis on transition, both at the freshman year and at the senior year. So we'll call upon Kevin to share his experience with that. He has a master's in school administration. He volunteered for several youth activities and sports programs and coached both at the middle and the high school basketball and football for 9 years. Principal Laura Loved, as she talked about Kevin coming on board in Hudson, said he is an outstanding classroom teacher and role model for students and peers, certainly what we were looking for, a systems thinker, and he will be responsible for student management issues all the way from discipline issues to student leadership and having a role in that. And we really look forward to Kevin's leadership and role at the high school. And you came on board last week. So Kevin, would you like to address the board? Just tell them a little bit about your experience coming to Hudson and what attracted you. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks.
Welcome, Kevin. Thank you. Continuing on, Mary?
Yes, I'll talk about enrollments now, and certainly I want to qualify this with caution as we look at the first day preliminary enrollment, and I'm going to be speaking about the kindergarten through 12th grade district resident enrollment. So we've taken out open enrollment students, we've taken out early childhood students, and there are a number of other groups that are not included in these numbers. And again, this is not our official enrollment. It will not be official until the third Friday in September. And we see quite a bit of fluctuation before that time. We expected that some new students probably came the day after Labor Day, today. Thinking that was the first day of school. So the numbers will change. I guarantee that from where we are today. And so if we look at the information that's been provided to the board, I can confirm that the first day of kindergarten, which was today, instead of having 461 students, those students who attended and were excused were 460 students. So very close to that number. And so if we look at the final numbers in the columns, we have increases at the high school, and if that holds true all the way to the third Friday, that would be a change for us. It's really been stable over the last few years, and we've anticipated that the high school enrollment will start to rise, and this would be evidence that it is if this continues. The middle school continues to increase, being the largest middle school in the state, as you know, we expect that it'll probably be 100 students over capacity this year. And if we look at the elementary enrollments, these still reflect an increase at the elementary level. And although it says 87 students at the bottom, we don't expect it to be exactly 87 students. So from these numbers, it could be 80 to 85, and it could change beyond that as well. But this is our first day enrollment, and again, caution thinking about the enrollment, but the thing that it does show and indicate for us is a growth. Our student enrollment continues to grow.
Thank you, Mary. Questions? No?
Yeah, I do. Mary, can you tell me, do these numbers compare with Dr. Hazel Reinhardt's predictions as far as enrollment? Or?
Well, District Deputy Director Nancy Sweet and I had that conversation because we knew you had that question. And we really didn't want to go back and look at them until Third Friday because her numbers compare to Third Friday. And this is so soft at this point. We know it's an increase, but beyond that, it just is not worth comparing this until we get to that point. So we made a conscious decision not to look at it yet.
Okay. And then as far as 461 for the kindergarten class, is that the biggest class that we've seen throughout our district?
Certainly it is. And if we would think of the graduating seniors each year, in the past, I think it's 3 years now, we've had numbers over 400, but just a few numbers over 400, a little bit over 400. And we know that from kindergarten to the time they graduate, those numbers increase. So this could be a very large class for us. But as we look at all of the elementary enrollments, at each of the grade levels, at least up to this point, we've seen 400 and over. We'll look at Third Friday and see where they really fall, but we expect these enrollments to creating much larger classes in the high school.
All right. We are moving on to the report section of the agenda. First on that list is the Rivercrest Energy Performance Report. Tim.
All right, thank you. We went back to Rivercrest and had Hoffman do some analysis for us on how the building is performing under that LEED Gold standard. And we've had some really good news. The building has been performing very well. We are looking at, if we look at figures percentage-wise, and we compare the Rivercrest to a conventional building built to minimum code standards, we're saving somewhere in the neighborhood of 45% compared to that conventional building. And that's savings in electricity and gas costs. If we're looking at how the building's performed according to the way it was designed, the building was designed to save about 31% on average. And we've actually exceeded that by about 14% to 15%. So not only is the building performing at a much higher level of efficiency than in a conventional building, it's also exceeded the expectations of the design for the building. And so that's certainly something that we'll realize those savings on into the future. So any questions?
All right, thanks, Tim. Next up, the Education Jobs Fund.
On page, if you go to the page 5 of the agenda, you'll see a letter there from the Wisconsin Department of Administration. And as you may well be aware, a education jobs bill was working its way through Congress and did pass. And as a result of that, the school district is going to be allocated $1,583,000. These dollars can be used over the next 2 years, so 2010-11 and 2011-12. And the purpose of the funds are to retain rehire or hire new staff at the building level, so not for administration, but at the building level. We have, of course, as we go through the budget presentation, we'll talk a little bit more about how those monies will be used. But again, it's $1,583,000. Those are new dollars for the district and to be used over a 2-year period. Any questions?
All right, thanks again, Tim. Moving along, the middle school addition construction update.
Yeah, I'll give you a quick update on the middle school addition. And things right now, things are progressing very well. It's still early yet, of course, but so far things are moving along. Footings and the foundation walls have been started, and they'll be starting to work their way out from those existing walls. If you remember the 3 walls that are connected, and then there's one outside wall. So the 3 walls, those footings and foundations have been started. We're doing some excavation for the sub-level that we had talked about. Some of the soils there aren't where they need to be as far as a standard for supporting the building. So those soils are being excavated out and being replaced. And so that work continues. They're dug down about 15 feet for that sub-level. We, at this point, after those items are done, the masons will come in and start to continue into the walls, and then the following month the steel structure will be started to put in place. And Hoffman has has been communicating with us very well all along during the project. And they also get involved with, obviously, the 2 principals at Hudson Prairie, because it does affect Prairie on site, and of course the middle school. And they've had a lot of communication back and forth about safety for our students and for our staff. And that's been going very well. We actually have taken some measures. We've had some additional eyes during recess out on the playground. We restricted entrance to truck traffic, and gates are up, fences are up. So of course, safety is of the utmost importance on the project. So that's my update. Any questions?
Madam President, just a question, Tim, around the completion date, projected completion date.
Projected completion is January.
Just sometime in January.
Yes. Yeah.
Matt? It's working. Has this rain stopped, or are they not, the rain hasn't stopped or postponed or backed up stuff?
No, we haven't had any delays that I'm aware of because of the rain.
Good.
Madam President, question. Tim, how are you handling any noise issues, sort of any disruptions that may be caused from the construction? Is there anything that we're doing to help mitigate those issues, or have we sort of gone past the point where, a lot of the noise, or I would imagine there has to be some, traffic and machinery, and how are we dealing with that?
Well, yeah, there are, obviously there are the normal noises associated with that. I probably couldn't speak as far as the exact scheduling or rescheduling that is being done, but we will work with Hoffman to make sure that there is a minimal impact to our students when they're in the classroom.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam President, I just wanted to check, Tim, I know you mentioned the soil correction. Was that a budgeted item, or I know we had anticipated soil correction. Was there more than we thought, or?
No, actually, soil correction at this point is under budget. It was budgeted for, and at this point it is what's estimated to be excavated and replaced is under budget.
Thank you.
Madam President, I just want to go back to Dan's comment. Certainly it's an important one, and I had the opportunity to talk to a number of teachers, particularly the ones in the music department that are right close to the construction. And I just can't say enough about their attitude about that space and making whatever accommodations are necessary. They were very clear about their value of the space, and they would move forward no matter what. We even went, if there's pounding that they have to deal with that isn't drums or some percussion instrument. But I really want to compliment them and also Hudson Prairie staff for their adjustments to the middle school edition and the plan for the short-term solution, because both staffs have really stepped up and supported this and are making the necessary adjustments.
Anyone else? All right, thank you. Topics for action, and the first item in this section of the agenda is the proposed budget for 2010-11. Tim?
If you turn to page 7, there starts the general fund budget, the budget adoption, the proposed budget. And we've got three columns there. We've got the audited 2008, 2009, and then where we are at this point in 9-10 with the year end, which is unaudited at this point, is going through the audit process, and then the 2010-11 budget, proposed budget. And if you, I'll just hit a few highlights. We see under 210, taxes under local sources of revenue. Those primarily is the general fund tax levy to operate the general fund. We also have, if you remember, we also have the tax levy for debt service as well. That's presented on the following page. If we go through the budget and just run down to line item 610, that's state categorical aid. Those are aids that we receive in addition to our base aid amount, or general aid amount. Under 620, the general aid, of course, is our largest revenue item to operate the schools, and that stands at 24,446. To note, if you jump down to line 710, which is called transitive aids, what's happening in 9-10 and in 8-9 is that the state had received state stabilization funds from the federal government, and what they did was they replaced dollar for dollar, reduced state aid, and then gave us state stabilization aid. So that is really a zero-sum effect on the budget. But if you look at the $2,955,000, and roughly, there are some other items in that number, but you have the $2,955,000 plus the $22,798.09, and then you do the same for 9-10. Then we've got what the state aids are. Now, if you go on to 10-11, then you look under the transitive state aids, $830,000. That's consisting of $810,000, the big number is $810,000 of the Federal Education Jobs Act. So that's included here. At this point, we're not aware, and the state hasn't communicated, if they intend to use any additional state stabilization funds in replacement of general aid. So we don't attempt to budget for that because it would be a total guess for us. But the 810 is what the, out of that 830 is what the state, or the Federal Education Jobs Act funding is. Continuing on down, so if you look at total revenues and other financing sources, for the 10-11 budget stands at $49,903,000. And previous to that, we were at $47 million. Moving down to expenditures and other financing sources, I want to highlight one area, which is the function 250,000, about midway down on the second category under support sources, go midway down, and it's business administration and facilities. And if you look all the way over to the 10-11 column, it's $9,110,000, and that consists of $1 million of expenditure for the middle school edition. So it's 1/2 of the $2 million cost for the middle school edition. We show that as an expenditure on that line item, and that's why you see the increase for that line item. Okay, and if we go on to the next page, and if you look at the total expenditures and other financing uses, we've got 51,503,000, and that includes, of course, the total of the $1 million for the middle school edition and the revenue from the federal Jobs Education Act. And then you can see the other numbers, how we wound up 47,771,000, and that's again assuming there are no adjustments during the audit upon completion of the audit, and then the audit at 0809 at 49,683,000. If you move down to the next section, a change in fund balance, and then it gives a fund balance at the beginning of the year and the fund balance at the end of the year. The planned use of fund balance for the 2010-11 budget is $1.6 million, and that's the $1 million coming out of fund balance for the middle school edition, so meaning there's no tax levy for that $1 million expenditure, but we do show it as an expenditure, and then using another $600,000 of fund balance to give relief on the total tax levy. And then you can see the fund balance then would be projected to be at $15,179,000 at the end of 10-11. Any questions on that first section?
Madam President, Tim, regarding the fund balance, can you tell us where that puts us in terms of our acceptable range of?
Sure. That would put you, assuming you'd have normal increases in the budget the following year, that would put you in a calculated range of about 28%, a little over 28%.
Thank you.
Tim, I'm sorry, can you say that again? 28%?
28%.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'll move on to the next, and the next sections actually break it apart into our remaining funds. These are self-balancing funds. They are each standalone funds. So the next section are special project funds, and the largest special project fund is special education. If you remember, special education does relate to the general fund, because when we take all of the different revenues that special education has and subtract out the expenditures, then the balance of that funding comes from the general fund. We also have which is called Fund 21, which is for private grants that the district receives. And so if you add both of those funds together, these are the results of those operations and budgets. So you can see the one difference is the special education fund doesn't hold a fund balance. That fund balance is zeroed out when we make the transfer from the general fund to the special education fund. So the fund balance that's remaining is really related to the 21 fund, which are the private grants to the district. Debt service, new for this year, we add in Fund 38, which is the Qualified School Construction Bond Fund, and that's the $1 million that the district received. That's the interest-free funding for the middle school edition. And then Fund 39, that's all of the previous referendum debt that's taken place over the years. So again, looking at those two funds together, you can see the total revenues and the total sources, and then we do retain some fund balance because we have to meet the next year's obligations. There's a timing issue with the tax levy and when our bond payments come due. So that fund is required to maintain maintain fund balance for those required payments. And then the capital projects fund, and again, we're adding a new fund to this one as well, and this is for the construction of the middle school because it's being financed with the Qualified School Construction Bond financing. We're required we create another fund to account for that. And so that's a combination of what occurred previously for Rivercrest construction and then what's occurring now for the middle school edition. Okay. And if you move on to the next page, food service is a standalone fund, and that you can see it has a balanced budget, $2,324,000 of revenues, and the same amount for expenditures. Community service is 2 different operations there. We've got their school-age care and then community service activities. And we do access some of that fund balance, and that's a planned reduction of fund balance for that fund. And then the package and cooperative programs are programs that we cooperate with on other districts where we're the financial host. And that one is a fund that zeroes out at the end of the year, so there's no fund balance held. Any questions?
Appears no questions. Tim? Okay. Thank you.
All right, we'll go on to the final page. The final page, if you recall, budget timing for us is that we receive a final aids statement from the state, and we receive final property valuations, and that doesn't happen until October. So we're already 4 months into the fiscal year when we receive that information from the state. In between that time, we have to do estimates of where we think property valuations are going to be. And so in front of you is a historical valuation going back to 89-90, and then going up through an estimate for 2010-11. And the estimate is based on the Department of Revenue's figures that they've put out. Again, this is, they will come out in October for school district when they start to apportion out the different values between the school districts. But what we're looking at is projecting a 7.78% decrease in district valuation from 9-10 to 10-11. If we look at the total levy, it was last year it was $27,828,000, and we're proposing the same levy this year, $27,828,000, so a 0% increase in the levy. The mill rate, what happens is when we have the fluctuation in the district valuation up or down, the mill rate then fluctuates, and with the decrease in the valuation, the mill rate goes up from 767 to 831, and the percentage changes are 885 to 843. Again, this is dependent on how the if properties move in unison up and down fairly the same level with a 0 levy increase, there are some variances, but for the most part you wouldn't see a difference. You wouldn't see any large fluctuations in the property tax. That being said, if you look down under the section for estimated valuation and levy by taxing district, where we've got the breakdown of each of our entities that lies within the district, you can see the city of Hudson and the township of St. Joe, and then also the village of North Hudson all went down in that 7% to 8.5%. The town of Hudson is expected to go down about 10.61%, and then the town of Troy is only going down 1.17%. So what happens is those are not all moving in unison. But so when the levy does get spread across what's called the equalized valuation, the equalized valuation is really what's estimated to be market value by the Department of Revenue. So as that tax levy gets spread, there will be some that will pick up a little bit more as a taxing entity, and some that will pick up a little bit less. Namely, the town of Hudson will pick up less, and the town of Troy will pick up a little more, because their values are not moving in unison in general with the rest of the entities. But again, these are estimates. So, and then you can see the percentage of district valuation for each one of those items. But again, looking at a 0% increase in the tax levy, and I'll leave it at that. Any questions?
Tim, I did have one question back on the page where we have the food service fund. I was just curious about particularly this year, the unaudited results. It looks like there's a sizable increase in that fund balance, and if there had been any conversation amongst the Finance Committee around strategies for addressing that building fund balance.
We're limited as to how much fund balance that we can hold by the state in food service. We do have plans. We do have a fairly significant investment in equipment that needs to be changed out. So our plan is to use that fund balance to change out equipment. And food service, not all districts are able to have food service standalone financially. Some districts actually wind up covering losses from food service. We're fortunate in that we haven't had that situation happen. And so what we do is we wind up reinvesting that fund balance into equipment to make sure that we keep our equipment up.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions about the proposed budget? Hearing none, is there a motion to accept the proposed budget for 2010-11?
Madam President, I would move to accept the proposed budget for 2010-2011 as presented.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kaiserschott, second by Dan Turnahoy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next topic for action is the new policy for online courses. Sandy?
And this you'll find on page 11, please. Hudson High School expanded its course offerings for the 2010-11 school year by adding full online courses through the Wisconsin Virtual School, which is the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction's designated public virtual program. We offered 11 AP courses, 3 languages, and 2 design courses, a web design and a game design. And these are all courses that we currently did not offer in our course handbook. The proposed policy, online courses, mirrors the youth options policy currently on the books in that it outlines the number of online credits students may receive, the students who may participate, in this case, sophomores, juniors, and seniors, and it also includes the expectation that students and/or parents or guardians will be responsible for the cost of the course if the student fails the course or fails to complete the course. This is similar to youth options. This policy was reviewed, this proposed policy was reviewed by the Learning and Program Development Committee at their August 23rd meeting.
Are there any questions for Sandy about the new policy? Dan?
Madam President, question regarding, I'm just curious how students are taking these. Are they taking them during the day? Do they have the option of doing these classes in the, other
Yes.
than?
There's a little bit of both,
Okay.
especially the seniors who have some options before, like first or last hour to have senior release. Many of them, that's when they're doing their courses. They're either doing them at home before they come on, or they're leaving and doing them there. If students, especially sophomores, have to stay on campus, they are then during their study hall. We're finding spaces in the media center. So any sophomore, junior, senior who wants a space, we are finding that within our 4 walls. But most of the juniors and seniors are doing it in addition to quite a full load, and they're doing them then they can go on anytime, 24/7. And so we're pretty excited. We have about 50 students taking approximately 60-some courses. So it's our first venture out.
Thank you.
Other questions? Brian?
Just a comment. Pretty excited about this. It's giving students the ability to take AP classes in curriculum that we don't even have, and it's students that probably can handle online, and I think just enriches their experience here in our high school. So I think it's a great thing.
Just a comment from me, and Brian and Pat and I had an opportunity to hear this at the Learning and Program Development Committee meeting, but I think it's important to understand that as Sandy and the team decided which courses to offer as additional online courses, they looked at what are some of the most popular courses for our students to take at River Falls through Youth Options. And so this is a way to keep the students here at Hudson High School, and I think that's important part of how they've gone after this work. So thank you.
Madam President?
Tom?
I may have missed this, and I apologize if I did. Besides the grade eligibility, junior, sophomore, and senior, are there any other eligibilities that are required, such as grade points or?
No, obviously, students meet with their counselors to plan their schedules, and so if there are concerns, there are discussions with the counselors and/or parents at that time. But we did have a parent-student meeting last spring, and again now at the end of August, just to go over the requirements of the course, the expectations, and kind of, again, outline a successful online student.
Can I follow up with a quick question also? Have you seen any impact in terms of capacity or seat availability in the building because of this? Has it opened up seats because of the opportunity, the option for online courses?
I haven't talked to Ms. Love yet about how it looks on campus, like first or seventh hour, but we can get back to you with that one.
Thanks, Sandy. If there are no other questions, I would entertain a motion to approve this policy.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Brian Bill, second by Tom Holland. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to the consent agenda items. If someone would like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda items and including the language on the disbursements.
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion to move to approve the consent items, including the Director of Financial Services be authorized to pay bills in the amount of $778,403.93.
Second.
Motion by Brian, second by Dan. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, committee reports. First on the list is the Finance Committee. Brian?
Yep, thanks. The Finance Committee met August 23rd, and first order of business was we reviewed the fund balance. We just want to make sure that we understood the low point on the fund, because as we know, the fund balance isn't just cash in our bank account. It comes and goes with accounts payable and receivable, and helping to smooth our cash flow. So the fund balance got down to the low point of 4.7 million, and that's about as low as we want it, because we always want to make sure that we have dollars. As you know, sometimes we don't get, sometimes maybe a delayed in payment from the state. We want to make sure we have the cash to cover that, so we don't have to go get short-term debt. And so we feel pretty comfortable where we're at. And even with the drawdown of $1.6 million of the fund balance, $1 million for the middle school and $600K to offset the tax levy, it still leaves us between 20 and 29%, well within our guidelines of 25 to 30. So that was that data point. And then we reviewed the education jobs funding that we just reviewed, the budget, and prepared for tonight's meeting.
Any questions for Brian? All right. Moving on, Learning and Program Development Committee. We met also on August 23rd, and we reviewed several items, including the new online course policy that we just approved, and along with that, Sandy talked more about the process that they went through to decide what courses to add as online courses, which you heard tonight. We talked about the process for adding a new high school sport. We also talked about some information that we have recently received, which provides data on a national level around the post-high school progress of the graduates from Hudson High School. We talked more generically about the online courses in the future at Hudson High School, and then finally, which was included in the consent agenda, we talked about some modifications to existing policies. Any questions for Learning and Program Development? No. All right. And finally, Personnel Committee. Mark.
Thank you, Madam President. The Personnel Negotiations Committee met August 30th. We discussed the teacher administrator evaluation cycles, reviewed comparables for administrative salaries, and gave approval to the administration's request to cap grade level enrollments at grade levels as needed based on capacity. Several sections are close and are being monitored. That is all.
Questions for Mark? All right. Citizens' request to speak. I'm assuming there are none. There are not. And so then we are at the end of our agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn? Adjourn to close session. So we need someone to make a motion to adjourn us to closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19.85, parent 1, parent E, for the purpose of deliberating about the sale or purchase of public property.
So move.
Motion by Brian.
Second.
Second by Lynn. We'll do a roll call vote.
Robson, aye.
German, aye.
Van Loon and I.
Holland, aye.
Turnohoe, aye.
Bell, aye.
Kaisershot, aye.
All right. All right, so there is no action coming out of this closed session, so we will not be returning for the regular board meeting. The annual meeting will begin at 7 p.m. here in the auditorium.